I'd rather run against, I think, Biden than anybody. I think he's the weakest mentally. And I like running against people that are weak mentally. I think Joe is the weakest up here. The other ones have much more energy. I don't agree with their policies, but I think Joe is a man who is, I call him 1% Joe, because until Obama came along, he didn't do very well.
Now, at his campaign event, Biden spoke about everything from ending cancer to the trade war with China. He also talked about his views on President Trump.
I believe that the president is literally an existential threat to America. He is a genuine threat to our core values. And if you wondered about that, remember what happened in Charlottesville. I never thought I'd see that happen in my lifetime again.
Hake is in Davenport with the former vice president. Garrett, thanks for joining us. You spoke with some Iowans today. How are they feeling about Biden?
Well, it's interesting. Joe Biden is the front runner, not just nationwide, but here in Iowa. There's a new Des Moines Register poll that came out over the weekend that has him at 24%, about 8% up over his closest rival. Joe Biden is an old shoe for Iowa voters. He's run for president 3 times now. He has spent a lot of time here. And really, in this gigantic field, he's the most known commodity. So in some ways, that's a great position to be in because Iowa voters are familiar with him. They're familiar with his work with President Obama. He comes into the gate with a lot of goodwill. And voters I talk to, Democratic voters, tend to fall into 2 camps. There are those for whom that is enough and for whom the Biden whole theory of the case here, which is that he's the strongest person to take on and defeat Donald Trump, regardless of what you think about almost anything else, he's the guy who could end the Trump era. There are those voters for whom that's enough. His association with Barack Obama, his perceived strength in a general election against Donald Trump is enough. And then there are other voters, and I don't know which group is bigger, and this will ultimately be the whole question here, I think, who say, 2010 was nice, but we could do better. That going back to being the Obama era, going back to that whole concept is not good enough for them. They want to see the future. They want to see something different. And Joe Biden may not be that. So that's kind of why we're seeing what we've been seeing here in Iowa today, which is the vice president, the former vice president, trying to do anything he can to punch upward, to target Donald Trump, to look strong, to look inevitable, to look like the future of the Democratic Party being the guy who could be the nominee, the guy who can beat Trump. And the president trying to diminish the former vice president by reminding folks of what he was before he was Barack Obama's number 2, which was, in 2008, the 5th or 6th place finisher here in the Iowa caucuses, didn't break 1%. So the president's barbs are nasty, they're personal. In that case, they're also true. And so you do have this dynamic here that's starting to shape up. Some of these other candidates will still be trying to break through. A lot of the folks I talked to today told me their second favorite, their other favorite person was Elizabeth Warren. She's been having a strong couple of weeks in Iowa and nationwide. This thing is not sewn up yet at all. We've got one more event for Joe Biden here tonight in Davenport. He's not keeping up the same kind of hectic campaign schedule some of these other candidates are. You can do that when you're the front runner, but Iowans expect to meet you at least once or twice if they're going to vote for you. So we'll see how it holds up.
Have you heard any reaction to the recent reports that Biden may be gaining steam according to Trump's internal poll in some of the states that Trump won last time?
Oh, sure. I mean, we see this in the public polling, too, right? I mean, this is places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, Ohio, even Texas. We've seen public polling that shows not just Joe Biden, but a number of the Democrats way ahead of President Trump in some of these battleground or could be battleground states. The Trump campaign, the Trump administration has pushed back on these polls so they don't buy it. They felt like they were behind in the 2016 polls. They ended up winning. Democrats like the idea that these places are competitive. They like that they can show the possibility that the president can be beaten in this place or in these various places. But I have to say, if you're Joe Biden, part of the reason you say you're running is you think you're the only guy who can beat Trump in these places. That's not what these polls show. They show a lot of these other candidates can beat Trump in those places. So, again, it'll be interesting to see that perception of strength. If Joe Biden starts to weaken, does his support go away all at once really fast, given that his whole candidacy is based on being strong? We'll see what happens. It's so early, but there's a lot of interesting information like those polls floating around out there.
And a lot of candidates and a lot of time left. Garrett Hake, thanks so much for joining us in Iowa.